yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the Bank of England said that his policies are fueling youth unemployment. That's not us, that's the Bank of England. For the first time ever, youth unemployment is now higher here than it is in the EU.
London is now a trap for young people hunting for their first job. The capital is now the epicenter of a youth unemployment crisis that threatens the future of thousands of young people and of Prime Minister Keir Starmer ahead of crucial local elections.
The Bank of England sat in front of Parliament this week and essentially said that the government's flagship policy to help young people has done precisely the opposite.
The Bank of England has just dropped a brutal bombshell on Keir Starmer, effectively admitting that Labour's so-called pro-worker policies may have backfired and slammed young people out of the job market. After raising employer taxes and forcing up hiring costs, Britain is now staring at youth unemployment levels worse than the EU for the first time in modern history. And just before local elections, the terrifying reality is this. Businesses are cutting jobs, London is flashing economic warning signs, and AI is preparing to wipe out many of the entry-level roles that still exist.
This is supposed to be the beating heart of Britain's economy. Today, the City of London is a ghost city. And at its heart is the Bank of England, now contemplating a historic collapse in economic activity.
Our young people can't get jobs, they are losing hope and even leaving the country. Will the Prime Minister tell us how he plans to deal with it?
Let that land for a second. You were promised fairness, opportunity, and leadership that finally understood working people. And the first major verdict from Britain's most trusted economic institution is that young people are now being locked out of work at a rate this country has not seen since 2014.
The Bank of England's chief economist Hugh Pill told the Treasury Committee this week that those two policies combined have hit young people particularly hard. The effects, he said, were particularly acute for workers aged between 16 and 21.
He has no plan to get young people into work. He has no plan to help graduates get out of the debt trap. They can complain as much as they like. These are facts.
So, what actually happened? Labour came into power and made two enormous decisions almost immediately. First, they raised employer national insurance from 13.8% to 15% and lowered the threshold, meaning businesses start paying more tax on workers earlier and harder. Second, they pushed through a massive minimum wage increase for 18 to 20-year-olds. On the surface, both of those things sound compassionate. Politically, they looked brilliant. Morally, the framing was perfect. Living wages, fairness, supporting the most vulnerable workers.
Today, figures show unemployment in the UK has gone up to 5.2%, with youth unemployment at a 10-year high at 16.1%. In some places across Britain, the picture is even worse. Across the West Midlands, and particularly in Birmingham, young people are struggling to find work.
But here is the brutal truth politicians refuse to say out loud. Businesses do not make hiring decisions based on what sounds morally satisfying. They make hiring decisions based on cold mathematics. And when you dramatically increase the cost of hiring the least experienced, least productive workers in your economy, those workers do not suddenly get hired at premium rates. They get replaced, they get cut, they get quietly removed from the equation entirely. The government increased the cost of hiring exactly the people it claimed it most wanted to help.
Birmingham Council figures show unemployment for 18 to 24-year-olds is now 18.6%. That's considerably higher than the national average.
Youth unemployment in Britain is now sitting at 16.1%. That is the highest figure outside the pandemic years since 2014. And here is the number that should genuinely embarrass anyone defending this government right now. The EU average for youth unemployment is 14.9%. Britain is now above the European Union average. For years, one of the loudest post-Brexit arguments was that Britain's flexible labor market kept unemployment lower than Europe. That argument is now dead. That narrative has collapsed in real time, and the data is impossible to spin away.
to hire more people that want those jobs, and so more young people. That was the idea. But because of the very cost of taking on a young worker has gone up so sharply that businesses, particularly small businesses, but now we see large businesses, Whitbreads, Beefeater and so on, they are simply not able to sustain the growth or even the existing shops with the existing staff.
Think about what a first job actually means, not the wage, hours, or the contract, think about what actually happens to a young person the first time they walk into a workplace and have to show up on time, take instructions from someone they have never met, communicate professionally, handle pressure, earn trust, and understand that the real world does not operate on the same terms as school or home. Those lessons are irreplaceable. You cannot learn them in a classroom. You cannot download them. You cannot get them from a government scheme or a training workshop. You learn them by doing the work.
He wants us to welcome economic news. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to welcome the fact that youth unemployment is at its highest ever. I am not going to welcome the fact that unemployment has increased every single month under this Labour government. He is not doing anything about student loans because he is not governing.
And the jobs that have historically given young people those experiences are precisely the jobs being destroyed right now. Hospitality, retail, cafes, pubs, hotels, restaurants, small shops. These are thin-margin businesses that survive by keeping costs brutally controlled. When government suddenly increases wage bills, payroll taxes, and compliance costs simultaneously, the weakest businesses do not absorb the hit and move on. They freeze hiring, they cut hours, they close locations, they automate wherever they can. The first-rung jobs disappear first, and the young people who needed them most are left standing outside a door that quietly closed without any announcement.
London, the economic engine, I suppose, of this country, the city that historically has absorbed everyone and just attracted everyone, young graduates, career changers, migrants, legal and illegal, ambitious people from every corner of the UK and various cities across the globe, suddenly sitting with the worst unemployment rate in the country.
London is now flashing economic warning signs that should terrify the government. Unemployment in the capital has hit 7.6%, the highest in Britain, and even Andrew Bailey called it quite unusual in British history. This is London, the city that was supposed to absorb graduates, ambition, and opportunity endlessly. Yet hybrid work has gutted the commuter economy that kept thousands of cafes, shops, and small businesses alive. The lunch crowds vanished, the after-work spending disappeared, and entire city center business models are quietly collapsing.
Another blow for young workers as UK executives see AI cutting jobs over the next decade. Around half of UK bosses fear the technology will lead to fewer jobs across the economy, and that's up from a third 2 years ago. And it's entry-level roles that are expected to bear the brunt. Almost 40% of business leaders surveyed now see AI reducing demand, up from about a fifth. Youth unemployment has become a pressing problem for Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Now add AI to this disaster. The jobs most vulnerable to automation are the exact entry-level roles young people relied on to build careers: junior admin, customer support, scheduling, data entry, routine office work. These were the stepping stone jobs that helped people prove themselves and move up. Now, young workers are being crushed from both directions at once, priced out of jobs today by government policy and automated out of them tomorrow by technology.
The share of jobless 16 to 24-year-olds is at its highest in a decade, and that's due to a mix of steep employment costs and technology affecting white-collar sectors. There's a clear disconnect between employees and their bosses. Almost a fifth of workers now use generative AI daily, mostly to improve the quality of their work. But business leaders tend to see AI mainly as a way to cut costs rather than grow revenue. That's bad news for young people looking for their first job.
Nearly 1 million young people in Britain are currently not in employment, not in education, and not in training. That number is not a statistic. It is a social disaster in slow motion. Long-term youth unemployment does not just reduce someone's income. It reduces their confidence, their sense of belonging, their belief that effort leads anywhere meaningful. It delays adulthood. It increases mental health deterioration. It creates welfare dependency that compounds over decades. Research consistently shows that a sustained period of unemployment at 18 or 19 years old leaves earnings and life outcomes permanently damaged well into middle age. You are not just losing a job. You are losing a version of your future that you were never even told was disappearing.
If you work in admin or customer services, you might want to listen up. Your job is one of the most at risk from artificial intelligence. A new City Hall report has found that at least 1 million jobs done by Londoners are either highly or significantly exposed to the impact of AI. Administrative and clerical roles are particularly vulnerable, and it means women are significantly more likely to be affected.
And there is a political dimension to this that Labour appears to have completely failed to anticipate. Societies become unstable when young people stop believing that the system works. When a generation looks at the world and concludes that working hard leads nowhere, that opportunity is reserved for people who already have connections and capital, that the people running the country are making decisions that actively harm them while talking about helping them. That generation does not stay quiet. It does not stay loyal. It starts looking for completely different answers, and not always the ones that lead somewhere healthy.
I feel like it means everything to me because I know what it feels like to not have a job. I put pressure on myself to work harder. So when I didn't have a job for like 8 months, it felt like I was in the depths of like hell. It was so bad. Like I can't even explain to you, especially when you see like your fellow students who started uni at the same time as you, already getting accepted into like the highest grad scheme jobs, and then you're just here trying to even get into a warehouse job.
Labour went into the last election with young voters as perhaps their most reliable demographic. Now, those same young voters face no jobs, unaffordable housing, expensive cities, stagnant wages, AI anxiety, and a Bank of England publicly questioning whether the government's flagship policies made their situation worse. The local elections coming up are not just a political inconvenience for Starmer, they are a referendum on whether Labour actually delivered anything it promised to the people who trusted it most.
The high street is dying. People are in debt.
I'm about to be evicted as well. I think a lot of people are getting evicted around here.
Businesses are closing. This is the front line of the cost of living crisis. So is it getting harder and harder to make ends meet?
Yeah, I haven't had a holiday for probably 6-7 years. Like tonight's my only night out of the week. I work like 60 hours a week as well.
Do you?
Yeah, like doing tons of overtime. I'm not saving anything either, so that's just to sort of make ends meet really.
Everywhere you look, there are money problems. Debts, bankruptcies and insolvency are all above average. And we're levelling up.
Small businesses across Britain are not making political decisions right now. They are making survival decisions. For a family-run cafe already crushed by rent, debt, energy bills, and rising payroll taxes, one extra employee can be the difference between survival and collapse. And when those businesses die, jobs vanish, high streets rot, and the politicians who caused it move on to the next slogan.
He needs to stop moaning about us and start fixing his useless government. Why should the country have to put up with 3 more years of this?
The government still talks like it is 2015, while the economy already looks like 2035. The old system, degree, junior job, career ladder, is breaking apart as AI targets the exact entry-level jobs young people relied on. The people who adapt will survive. The people waiting for the old economy to come back are waiting for something that no longer exists. So if these policies are already crushing jobs and small businesses, what happens when the economy gets even worse? And are Britain's leaders preparing for the future or still trapped in the past?